Hey, my name is Craig Collins, and welcome to the What the Warehouse show. With us on the line is Kaydon Stanzione from LogistiWerx. Thank you for being here, Kaydon.
Oh, thank you, Craig. It's a pleasure to be here. We're very excited to have this opportunity to exchange some information today.
Brilliant. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up and how did you get into the supply chain industry?
It's an interesting story. I'll try to condense it. My background is in the aerospace industry. I was a commercial pilot, designed some aircraft, and several years ago, we designed an electric aircraft and became an Uber Elevate partner where we were going to move passengers. But in around 2015, I started looking at how does the military, because my background is 22 years working with the Department of Defense on classified programs. And the biggest issue with success is logistics and supply chain. For example, if you can't get whether it's food, supplies, ammunition, or whatever to where it needs to be, you're going to have a complication. So the other thing is there was a program called SYNCGARS, Single Channel Air to Ground Communications, to try to communicate the information from land, transport, ground, troops, as well as in air and also over water. So while this is available to the military around 2015, I realized this has not been permeated into the civilian workforce. So we started developing adapting some of our military programs into taking a look at commercial applications. And what we found was we can really significantly improve the efficiency and productivity of logistic transportation by utilizing advanced tools and advanced communications and making sure everybody in the supply chain or the inter-supply chain is talking. Now, when Elevate ended up folding, and again, they were really small aircraft focused on passengers. When they folded into Joby, what happened was everybody said, well, we're going to turn our aircraft design into supply chain. Well, these aircraft are only 1,200 pound fixed useful load. That wasn't big enough. So we published a paper globally last year that showed, you know what, using vertical lift capability like a helicopter or a transformative aircraft could be very, very effective in the supply chain. It can alleviate log jams, sort of the way the military does what's called vertical replenishment, ship to shore. Because you heard a lot of oceanic vessels sitting with millions of pounds of freight 50 miles or 100 miles offshore, but no place to deliver it. It could be air delivered. So we kind of got into that, and next thing you know, it kind of became explosive, and here we are today.
Oh, that's interesting. When we were offline just before we started, you spoke to us about the acquisition of helicopters. And so tell us I mean, it's really exciting to hear because it's one of those real challenges that, especially as our cities get more populated, getting stuff to the final destination, that last mile delivery is so important. So tell us what you guys are doing there, and especially around the helicopters.
So the thing with advanced aircraft and having, let's say, all electric, the value of all electric is for fire protection, right? So you don't have basically explosive fuel on the aircraft. Plus, they can be a lot quieter. Jet engines, turboshaft engines are very noisy. So what you want to do is you want to minimize that last mile, or what we would call transferring the load off to a cartage agent. So the closer you can get to a populated area or to the final destination, the cheaper the per pound per mile freight cost is going to be, and the less risk to damaging the freight because you're not necessarily doing a lot of intermodal transfers, transloading, if you will.
Right.
So it's very possible that, for omni-channel distribution, which is in e-commerce, what could happen is an order would come in, it would come to the warehouse that has the stocking goods, and let's say for a manufacturing facility that has the ability to have a heliport, let's call it, on their facility, we could pick the load up directly from the warehouse and take it directly to the OEM or the manufacturer. This totally eliminates land transportation. So what we realized is over the years, nobody's really done this because A, helicopters are incredibly expensive to purchase, and there's not enough of them. I mean, to give you an idea, a large carrying helicopter, which could cost $35 million to manufacture, that you might only build 300 in 20 years. That's 15 a year. You're not going to be able to build a fleet. Now, during this period, we noticed that the Army has a very nice mid-sized proven aircraft called the Black Hawk. It's in worldwide operation with many military services and countries. And what we found was they are retiring that fleet. That's going to put over the next 10 years, maybe 3,000 aircraft into the fleet. Now, commercializing those aircraft is becoming very viable. So now we could look at particular geographic areas. And now let's talk about that. So what happens is if you're looking at in the United States, so let's just take the geography. If you have to go down below one of the Great Lakes, you might drive 300 miles, and that might take in traffic 8 to 10 hours. Or it's a 20-minute or 15-minute flight across the Great Lakes. This is a game changer. I'm going to give you another problem that we've really looked at. So in the United States, as you look on the East Coast, coming up north from the south, from let's say the mid-central continent, the United States geography starts to bend to the right. So when you travel through a major city like New York City, it's very feasible for trucks to spend 5 hours getting through the log jam of traffic.
Yeah.
It's a huge waste of time. And what happens is you run into another problem. Trucks that are day drivers are limited essentially to 11 hours of driving within a 14 or 16-hour day. But when you're on duty for 5 hours just going through a bridge, that really shuts down your ability. So even though you might only have to travel 140 miles to drop a load, what happens is you don't have enough available time to drive back. So you either have to drive in teams, which becomes very expensive, or you have to rest, according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And this is just in the US, but it's all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is we looked at, it's loss of productivity, right? You now have a tractor trailer that has to sit for 10 or 12 hours to recoup their hours, get past midnight, and then come back. And it usually comes back deadhead. So you're not bringing a backhaul. Now, our helicopters can take, a portion of the load. Obviously, we're not going to carry 44,000 pounds, right? Or, 20,000 kilos, but we can take, 4,200 kilos, roughly 8,000 pounds, but we can deliver that load in 18 minutes. So even if we had to make what's called multiple sorties, multiple trips, there's a bunch of things we're doing there. We're also saving the wear and tear on a road. A lot of people may not realize the tremendous impact in terms of infrastructure degradation caused by tractor trailers. So put it in perspective, one tractor trailer traveling a line haul route back and forth, same route, 5 days a week for a year, okay, puts the equivalent of 15 billion passenger car miles on that road. That's one tractor trailer.
Yeah.
So let's take it another way. Roads that were designed for 20 years to be maintenance free for the most part, statistically maintenance free, for 20 years, if they now, because of rerouting of traffic and construction problems, you now allow tractor trailers on that road, what happens is the life expectancy of that road drops to 7 years. Yeah. So now you have to look at the cost impact of the infrastructure into the overall logistics. Now, you could say, well, that doesn't affect the carrier, but it does because it affects road taxes.
Yeah.
So if the state or federal government has to pay hundreds of millions or billions of dollars for road repair, which is an accelerated time frame than what the original planning is, then the taxes go up. We have seen in certain areas small loads where the taxes, the road taxes, are pretty much equal to the cost of a small TL delivery.
Yeah. This is fascinating because you've opened, I mean, I've seen so much in logistics over the last 30 years, and you suddenly are like opening up this world that I've never thought about. But even, it has ramifications across every area of how we deliver things. If you think about things like your planning, route planning, when you're planning an entire truckload up, let's say to upstate New York, you are planning multiple stops. Those stops are, possibly 50-mile detours off the main road. Now, and then you've got to make sure it's all in delivery order, so you can't change it. When you start to deliver smaller loads in 15 minutes or half an hour with a helicopter, it changes the whole planning dynamic. It's the routing dynamic. The ability to respond more rapidly to a customer delivery and change request even. It really can revolutionize the way we deliver.
You're absolutely right. We've had early conversations with individuals from Amazon when they were running their drone operations and looking at that. Amazon, and this gets into that omni-channel e-commerce and distribution. Amazon's changed the world in the sense that you can get on your computer at 8 o'clock in the morning and have some products, a lot of products at your doorstep by noon. Now they're achieving that, of course, with multiple warehouses and delivery vehicles, and those are last mile delivery vehicles. So you're really not hauling a lot of freight over a tractor trailer, but the infrastructure is tremendous. Now you have major retailers that could compete in that space, and they're trying to do it like a Walmart, for example. They have the real estate, but then they still have to develop a transportation fleet and manage that transportation fleet to compete with Amazon. And of course, it's not like they have a centralized warehouse. They have to do, a pick and pack and load at every one of their retail stores. So it becomes a challenge. But what happens is the buyer doesn't care about that. The buyer says, I want it in 4 hours. Get it to me. I don't care how you get it to me. And then they take it one step further. Oh, by the way, I want it like Amazon Prime. I don't want to pay for shipping. So now you have a huge cost model. Like you're saying, it changes everything. It changes not just your route planning, but it also takes a different approach on how you're going to utilize warehousing. That's why we're here today, very excited to talk to your organization, because we understand what you're doing, and we completely support it and realize that what happens is OEMs, manufacturers, for example, they usually don't have the kind of space where they want to manufacture and store. They usually want to manufacture and get it out. So that means let's get it out to a warehouse. But getting it out to a warehouse and warehouse storage, and then of course the delivery charges, it adds up. Now for small package delivery parcels, you're using your standard DHLs and FedExes and UPSs and what have you, or local transportation. But when you start talking about over the road or long distance, or at least distance that would require a significant land transportation cost, that what happens is you start running into that time value money. A customer they need bolts. They can't assemble their product unless they have the bolts. And the bolts are sitting in your warehouse, and you can't get them those bolts, which might only be 300 miles away, but you can't get them for at least a day. They need it now. So the question is, their whole financial model changes because lost product opportunity. They're shut down.
Exactly.
They can have the greatest product in the world, but if they don't have that, ASTM certified bolt, they're done. So I think what we're showing is that, Uber was showing things like, wow, we can short circuit from a retail shop, to an end user. I highly doubt that we're going to see drones flying in our, residential neighborhoods dropping off packages. Maybe that day will come one day, but it's not going to be for a long, long time. And of course, the regulatory agencies, whether it's Transport Canada, it's EASA overseas, it's the FAA, there's a lot of certification issues that are going to have to make that safe and viable. And that could take many, many years. So in the meantime, you still have to use kind of a focal point. And that's why we see organizations that know how to efficiently manage warehouses can be very instrumental. Now, of course, the availability of square footage and floor space in the warehouse is becoming at a premium these days. And we've actually seen, for example, here in the United States, we've actually seen Walmarts and Targets and other large box retailers where the mill vans, the Marsec containers, are actually being stored in the parking lot because they can't store them at the dock. They don't have warehouse storage capability. They have no place else to put them. So they put them in the parking lot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to some of the other stuff that your company, LogistiWerx, does. And, I see not only are you talking about the future on helicopters, but right today, you are doing some really interesting stuff about the improvement of communications. Because again, when you start to have this type of shortening of lead time in your deliveries, you have to prepare for that and you have to get the communications right. So let's talk a bit about communications.
Sure. So what we see happening, and like we manufacture our own radios and our communication protocols. Obviously, we do need to go to the cloud, and that means that we're talking to the major players that are, providing internet-based services. But what happens is with all those internet-based service companies, they too are tracking your utilization. They know what's going on. So if you're doing GPS tracking and you're hitting the cloud, some carrier knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when it comes right down to it, when you get down to like last mile and delivery to customer, you may not necessarily want a third party that's external to have that information. So we've built long range radios, very, very low cost. As a matter of fact, we don't even charge for the radios that we can put in vehicles, we can put them in aircraft. And as they get into the area, like our helicopters, as they start to get close to the area, we don't need to go to the cloud anymore. We can do like a peer-to-peer communication between, let's say, a participating warehouse,
Yeah.
a tractor trailer or a land transport, and an aircraft. And the whole idea there is to minimize detention. We have seen over and over, I can't tell you, thousands and thousands of truck sorties where they get to a terminal or a yard on time for them, but then they can't get a slot in the dock.
Yeah.
And to wait 1, 2, 3 hours, even 5 hours is not a problem. Where you see that. It's not a problem for the warehouse. It's a major problem for the cost of the delivery of goods and for the trucker and the carrier. What happens is when you're waiting a lot of time, what's now happening is you're getting close to dock closing times. So being able to make that delivery, you get there at 3 p.m. and plenty of time, but you can't get in there. The dock closes at 5 p.m. and now they want you to sit and wait to 8 a.m. again where you wake up.
Yeah.
That is a huge loss of money and a huge time delay, is particularly in the LTL space.
Yeah.
So again, when you talk about, and Craig, you mentioned optimal rerouting, it's nice to know that the dock is going to be jammed, that maybe what you can do is reroute in real time. And of course, you have to worry about the loading in the truck, right? So it's, last in, first out. But even with that, sometimes depending on the number of skids you have or the spots on the trailer, it's well worth to reroute if it's nearby and actually pull some skids off to drop and load out and then load the other skids back in. And you may have to charge, there might be lumper charges or other accessorial charges in the trucking company, but it's well worth it in the long run if you can avoid an overnight stay.
Right.
So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to minimize and ultimately eliminate the detention with just-in-time delivery capability.
Right. So, people can go to your website and just for the benefit, LogistiWerx. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. LogistiWerx.
Well, we call it LogistiWerx.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, so the website is like logistics, logisty, and then werx.com. And you know what you guys are all about is about visibility, and that communication that you've just spoken about is really one of the components of the visibility that you're trying to bring to not only the delivery but to the warehouse as well. And then by putting in really clever mechanisms for delivery, for things like thinking about drones and helicopters, etc., really revolutionizing what happens in the transportation industry.
You're correct. So a little bit about my background. I spent a lot of time in special operations, again, on the Department of Defense and the military side. And what happens is whether it's in law enforcement or crisis management, when there is a crisis, no matter where it is, you need to use the assets that you have now.
Right.
The promise of a better tool sometime in the future is absolutely useless to you. So if all you have is, I'll be facetious, a hammer, if that's all you have, then that's what you have to use.
Sure.
You're not going to get a future tool. You have an immediate crisis. So what we have done is we have taken the technologies that are available today, the assets that are available today, the processes that are in place today, and say, how can we use all of those tools today to be more efficient, more productive, to reduce the cost of operations, to be competitive with the emerging world of technology, but to make sure that people get what they need today.
Right.
As well as it allows us to plan for the future, and that's great, and we're doing that. So there's two key words. One is called the technology readiness level, TRL, and the other one's called MRL, manufacturing readiness level. And what happens is if you have a technology, but it's not ready today, then it may not be useful to you. Most likely it won't be. On the other hand, if you have a fully developed technology that's available today, but you can't produce it or manufacture it in sufficient numbers to have a multitude of people and facilities use it, then that's useless to you too. So
Sure.
all of these issues come into play. We don't necessarily need to build, quote unquote, the anti-gravity machine of the future. We need to solve today's problems with today's tools, but make sure we're on a path and provisioned for the future so that whatever we're doing today, we're developing lessons learned and migratory paths that we don't have to abandon in the future as we see new technologies and new processes come into play.
Absolutely. Well stated. Tell me, how does LogistiWerx make money? And what is your primary product? Is it the delivery services or is it the technology solutions?
It's the technology solutions, but most importantly, it's integrating all of the technologies. So what happens is, you get software companies that are predominantly grown, like Salesforce, Qualcomm. They predominantly grown from an enterprise resource management system. So they're doing your payroll, your HR functions, your contact, your sales management. That's great. Those tools over the years have migrated into transportation and into logistics and supply chain, and they've become these monolithic amalgamation of all these disparate technologies, and they're incredibly expensive. But what we see is you need to put the power in the mobile hands, right? It's got to be in the mobile hands of the driver, of the person on the shop floor, the person on the warehouse floor. And mobility is everything. And that's going to communicate, obviously, to an enterprise system, but you need to have one complete system for rapid ability and for rapid changes because it's a dynamically changing world. So what we have done is we've built a family of modular technologies that are fully integrated. Everything is a la carte. And if you need a specific feature, for example, need your dock managed better. Okay, we can provide you instantaneously with a mobile app. Now you can use that as a standalone mobile app and then just have it integrate with your existing infrastructure. And that becomes important, right? I mean, we recognize that we're not going to go into a company and replace their whole enterprise system. They've got
Yeah.
billions of dollars invested, but more importantly, they've got hundreds or thousands of people that have been trained and utilizing that system and processes in place. So we took the approach of where's the gaps? Where's the gaps in all of these enterprise solutions? And we don't need to replace everything. What we need to do is provide gap solutions that can seamlessly integrate with their existing system. And over time, any system that we have that might be more efficient that could replace, let's say, one of their more archaic systems
Yeah.
that they can adapt to us. So we kind of slowly permeate ourselves into somebody's operations as opposed to one having the huge risk on their end of saying, oh, we're going to place something. And that's also a huge capital expense. They've already sunk that money. We recognize that. So we're not looking for any capital expenditures. We're not saying that we're going to, really affect you financially, from upfront. There's no upfront cost. Everything that we do is
Yeah.
think of it as a pay per use model. And in this particular, instance, for whether it's at the dock, it's drivers, it's at the client side, the shipper side, the receiver side, whatever it may be, we infuse. We have like 40 different applications that can be infused into an existing system or used as a standalone, or eventually integrated into our enterprise.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to have to start or to call it at this point because we start to get past the length of time that we can get onto these videos. But I tell you what, we're having such a fascinating chat, and I'd really like to unpack some of those point solutions that you guys have got. I certainly can see a number of our customers and viewers being really interested in the stuff that you do. So I'd like to schedule another session with you at in possibly a couple of weeks' time where we can actually go through and unpack these different point solutions that you guys have got, the different mobility solutions, and also just carry on with the chat. I mean, the way that you're thinking just fascinates me. I really am enthralled by the breadth of the thought process that you're going through, from the electric vehicle stuff. I mean, there's a whole topic of conversation that we had beforehand about what you're doing with your TikTok channel, the Go EV Point stuff, and I want to bring that up as well. And maybe we could just end with that. Tell us, you told us before about a TikTok channel that you guys have launched and that's really gone viral. Tell us about it.
Sure. It's Go EV Life. It started off actually with my son, who was in graduate school at the time, and he purchased a Tesla. And what he wanted to do was understand, where is the demographic for Teslas? Tesla, at the time, a couple of years ago, was an expensive car. Obviously, Elon Musk has now dropped price and is he has a disruptive model, right, in the auto industry. But the thing was that the EV portion of it appealed to a younger crowd that was interested in everything from climate awareness to saving energy, but they didn't necessarily have the pocketbook to buy that vehicle. So the question became one of where was the interest? So what started off as just making a couple of little interesting videos on how you would utilize an electric vehicle. What are the drawbacks? Obviously range and charging, and people don't seem to understand that, in the sense that at the time, okay, well, I'm not buying gasoline, right? I'm not buying petrol. All I have to do is plug my Tesla in. Well, that energy is coming from somewhere, right? Right. So I mean, there's all kinds of Newtonian physics and Einsteinian physics that says energy needs to be conserved, right?
Yeah.
So that what started off with that became a fascination. And what happened was the demographic started off at young, like college kids in that 18 to 21-year age demographic, mostly male. Today, we look at the demographic and it's pushing into the mid 30s, professionals married with, I think, 62% women now.
Wow.
They're concerned, about the planet. They're concerned about their children. So we've also expanded that to, how is this going to change your life? Now we're seeing another metamorphosis. What we're seeing is, it's come reality. What's the life expectancy of the batteries? How do you dispose of them? And the energy capture of a battery, a lithium ion, lithium sulfur battery, is not as powerful, obviously, as petrol or diesel, but it's also not as capable as hydrogen fuel cells.
Sure.
So now we're seeing hybrid technology come into play. And I don't think a few years ago anybody would have thought that hydrogen fuel cell technology, the TRL, if you will, and the MRL of hydrogen fuel cells would be developing so quickly.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that what we'll be seeing in the future is Teslas being hydrogen fuel cell based. Musk may disagree with me on that because he can, but I think you're going to start seeing because you need that range, and also the other issue is the downtime. If you have batteries in there that says I need it, like in a tractor trailer, Nikola, and these trucking companies, for example, Freightliner has a e-Cascadia as opposed to a fuel burning diesel burning Cascadia. The e-Cascadia, great for local deliveries. It's only got about a 200, maybe a 250-mile range, which says you're only going out to bingo point at half that distance, all right, less than half, and you've got downtime to charge it. So, you're spending a lot more money to have that, I'm going to say that go green initiative in your fleet, but you're paying a big dollar for that and you're not getting the productivity. So, that's where fuel cells can come in. But these would be great conversations that we'd like to have. And perhaps, Craig, maybe your viewer base, can respond in and present problems that they have or questions that they have as we look to the future of this whole logistics, the inter-supply chain and how it's going to change.
Absolutely. So in case you missed it, that was Go EV Live. It's a TikTok channel.
Life.
Go
Life.
EV Life. Go EV Life. And definitely worth checking out. They've got sort of millions of views and really, really worth going and giving them a follow. And I really look forward to catching up with Kaydon again in the future. This conversation has only just started and we're sort of 40 minutes in. So, Kaydon, thank
you so much, Craig, to you and your organization. Love watching the videos and really just tickled pink to be a part today. Again, thank you very much.
Yeah. So stay online. Let me just wrap up with the audience. The audience can reach you at if they search for LogistiWerx. They can also get you on LinkedIn. And I think the best way is just go and take a look at their website, LogistiWerx Inc.'s website, and we'll also put a link in the bottom of the video.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And next time we get together, we can talk about our Freight Hawk. If you think 3PL for trucks, think vertical takeoff and landing 3PL. Our program is Freight Hawk. It should be officially launched in February, so it's right around the corner, about mid-February. So we'll be very excited to share that with you.
It's called Freight Hawk because it's a Black Hawk helicopter?
Correct. It's the Black Hawk hauling commercial freight.
That's insane. I just love the idea. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in to the What the Wow show. And if you'd like more information on our product, Granite WMS, hit us on the website, granitewms.com, and leave comments and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Good day.